Greetings, my name is Ian Beabout and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I thought we would take a look at the 1969 release, Stand Up by Jethro Tull. This is Jethro Tull's second record after the release of This Was, and was the first to feature longtime guitarist Martin Barre, who played with the band until 2011. So he was the longest standing member behind lead singer and flautist Ian Anderson. So the band at this time were joined by Glenn Cornick on bass and, of course, Clive Bunker on the drums. And this is a rather important album that I think, looking at it now, it's kind of hard to understand just how important it is, because a lot of this stuff is now sort of commonplace, especially with Tull, because Tull advanced so quickly in the years following this record. But if you think about This Was in the context of 1968, it's very much a British band playing American blues music, whereas Stand Up is the beginnings of the eclectic Jethro Tull. The Jethro Tull that was open to a wide variety of musical influences, including unusual folk instruments such as the balalaika, which appears on the second song, Jeffrey Goes to Leicester Square. With this album, you have the blues influence still kind of hanging around a little bit in tracks like A New Day Yesterday and Nothing Is Easy, both of which, at least A New Day Yesterday, make me think a little bit of Black Sabbath. And this is particularly interesting given the fact that Tony Iommi was briefly a member of Jethro Tull before he left or was fired and went back to Earth. And by Earth, I mean his pre-Black Sabbath ensemble. However, this album does contain one of the most important early Jethro Tull songs, and that is a jazzy rendition of J.S. Bach's Bourrée. And you can already see Tull combining disparate influences. You have American music, jazz, with classical music, all coming together with this crazy madcap flute player at the front of the group. And this is one of their most iconic pieces, a piece that if you go see the current incarnation of Jethro Tull live, you're probably likely to hear it. And it's also probably going to have solos that are note for note like the original recording. This album also has Nothing Is Easy, as I mentioned before, a track that I think is a staple of Jethro Tull and was Martin Barre's audition piece, which is interesting. I also find it unique that Martin Barre had only really been playing guitar for a few months, if maybe a year, at the time of joining. And after a failed audition, he did come back and he passed the audition. And the reason why Martin Barre joined the band, or the reason why Ian Anderson hired Martin Barre, is not because he was an amazing virtuosic musician. That would come later. It was because Ian Anderson recognized in Martin Barre a willingness to try anything. And that willingness is what allowed Martin to grow into the axe wielder that we know of him today. Prior to this album, he was primarily a flute player and saxophonist. To go from flute and sax, which are woodwind instruments with keys, to an instrument with strings, these aren't necessarily instruments that easily translate. This is somebody who's creative and willing to put in the work. And I always found that remarkable that Ian Anderson saw that quality in Martin Barre, even back then. Nothing Is Easy is a super important track, and it isn't. It isn't an easy song. It's actually a very, very difficult song. Fat Man is another all-time classic that got played a lot. Again, this is an example of Tull embracing folk music and starting to branch out. And I feel like Jethro Tull really stand out for being one of the early fusion groups. And I don't mean jazz fusion, although there are jazz influences, but just fusion of disparate music styles and putting them together and seeing what sticks. Of course, you have We Used to Know, famously borrowed chord progression by the likes of the Eagles for Hotel California. Reasons for Waiting, which is an early example of a gorgeous Jethro Tull ballad with some incredible string arrangements from Dee Palmer, who would go on to join the band in 1977, but she was always kind of on the periphery of Jethro Tull, even back on the first album. She's there. For 1,000 Mothers is kind of this hard-rocking, driving piece that allows Clive Bunker a chance to show that he is one of Jethro Tull's finest drummers and still is to this day, because Clive Bunker is very much still active, which is an incredible thing to me. You also have a couple of important associated recordings with this collection, such as I think it's the band's only single, Living in the Past, the only hit single they had. I'm sure that if they had really wanted to, they could have been a singles band, but they chose not to. In fact, this song itself rather laughs in the face at the idea of a single, putting it in the quite undanceable 5/4 time. And I remember Ian Anderson making a joke about how you need like 3.5 legs or something like that to dance to it. But it is a very memorable song, and it's a very good song. And when you hear it, it's uniquely Jethro Tull. You also have Driving Song, and that's a song that I really enjoy, and I'm kind of glad to have it here in the extras. Also, I really enjoy the alternate version of Beret. Again, I mentioned that when Beret was played live, especially in the last couple of decades, they like to play it pretty much note for note in terms of the solos. They might add little extra sections here or there, but every bass player after Glenn Cornick pretty much had to learn Glenn Cornick's solo because it is so iconic. So I like having this previously unreleased version of Beret included because it's a unique and different take, very different take, on a classic song that is burned to memory for a lot of people, myself included. And I like hearing that they were trying different stuff in the studio. And I like hearing that those parts that you hear on the album were spontaneous at the time. This was just, they were making it up, a lot of it, as they were going along. And it also includes some contemporary live performances, which are interesting to hear if you love this era of Jethro Tull. But the reason for me bringing this album up is that this 5.1 collector's box set is going to be reissued at the end of the month, and it's been out of print for a little while. And I wanted to mention that despite the fact that it is a 8-track recording, I do think that Steven Wilson's remix has revealed a lot of detail and nuance in these performances while also staying incredibly faithful to the original mix, including some of the late 60s hard panning of instruments, like drums being all the way on one side of the room or the bass being panned hard right or hard left. Many of those mixing choices are retained. So you do get the sense with the surround mix that it is very faithful, and it's essentially just a 3-dimensional rendering of the stereo mix with added clarity. And speaking for myself, I was listening to this last night, and I noticed a lot of detail, especially in Martin Barr's rhythm guitar parts in Beret, that I'd never really noticed before on prior mixes of this record. All right, so just a short video today, I think, but I just wanted to make you aware that this is going to be reissued in a few weeks, and I wanted to give a formal recommendation that if you don't have the stand-up box set and you love this album, and if you're interested in the history of Jethro Tull or even progressive music in general, I think it's a worthwhile pickup. And hopefully you can use this review to make an informed decision on that. All right, that's it for me for today. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it. Also, leave me a comment. Let me know if you plan to pick this up. Or if you already have it, let me know what you think of it. Let me know if you think that it's worth getting for folks who don't already have it, which I'm guessing is a lot of fans don't already have this because it sold out rather quickly. Also, if you enjoy this kind of content, I talk about Jethro Tull very often, along with other progressive bands of the day. I am planning on doing similar videos for the War Child album and the Heavy Horses album, both of which are also going to be reissued at the end of the month. So subscribe, and you'll get some more info, as well as some info about other upcoming releases and reissues. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name's Ian Beabout, and you'll hear from me soon. Bye-bye.